Welcome to Dusky Lore. Close your eyes, dim the lights, and listen closely as the shadows begin to speak. Story 1. When it comes to online dating, I have always been pretty cautious. You hear all kinds of horror stories about people getting tricked by fake profiles, scammed, or something worse, and I was not about to let that happen to me. So when I matched with Luna on a dating app, I made sure to do my due diligence. Her profile looked legitimate. Photos of her in different places, posts about her love of photography and hiking, and a few mutual friends. Nothing stood out as a red flag. We started talking, and from the very beginning, Luna was different. She had a mysterious air about her, but not in a creepy way. At least not at first. She was funny, witty, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We exchanged messages every day for about a week, and I started looking forward to our conversations. She replied quickly, always had something interesting to say, and even sent me some photos from her latest hikes, each one more impressive than the last. After about a week of chatting, I suggested that we meet in person. I was excited, but also a little nervous. Meeting someone from an app always carries a certain level of risk. But Luna felt so real, so authentic, that I pushed those concerns aside. We agreed to meet the following weekend at a coffee shop near a very popular hiking trail. It was a public place, and it seemed like the perfect spot for a first date. But then things started to get strange. A few days before we were supposed to meet, Luna texted me with a change of plans. She said she would not be able to make it to the coffee shop because something had come up with her family, but that she did not want to cancel. Instead, she suggested we meet somewhere else, an old abandoned house on the outskirts of town. At first, I thought she was joking. Who in their right mind would suggest meeting at an abandoned house for a first date? When I asked her about it, she assured me it was a beautiful place, with great views and a lot of history. She even sent me a photo of the house at sunset, with the light filtering through the trees in a way that made the place look almost magical. I was hesitant, but Luna was persistent. She told me she had been there before, that it was one of her favorite spots, and that she would love to show it to me. Against my better judgment, I agreed. There was something about her that made me want to trust her, even though every logical part of my brain was screaming that it was a bad idea. The day of the date arrived, and I found myself driving toward the address Luna had given me. The road was long and winding, leaving town and stretching into more remote wooded areas. As I drove on, the trees grew denser, the houses became fewer and farther between, until I was completely surrounded by forest. The sun was starting to set, and the farther I went, the more I began to doubt my decision. But I had already come too far and did not want to back out. I kept telling myself that Luna was just an eccentric, adventurous person, and that all of this was part of her charm. At last I reached the place. The house stood at the end of a narrow gravel driveway, hidden behind a wall of trees. It was old, much older than I had expected, with crumbling stone walls and boarded-up windows. The roof had partially caved in, and the yard had been swallowed by weeds and ivy. It looked as though no one had lived there in decades. I parked and got out of the car. The crunch of gravel beneath my feet was the only sound in an unsettling silence. I looked around, expecting to see Luna's car or some sign that she was there, but there was nothing. The place was deserted. I pulled out my phone to text her, but I had no signal. The screen showed a single lonely bar that appeared and disappeared. I started to feel uneasy. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I realized how isolated I was. But I had come all this way, and I did not want to chicken out. I climbed the porch steps. The wood complained under my weight. The door was half open, hanging off its hinges, and I hesitated for a moment before pushing it. The inside was just as run down as the outside. The floorboards were warped and rotting. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper and mold. A thick layer of dust covered everything, and the air was stale, damp, as if the place had been sealed up for years. I called out for Luna, but there was no answer. The house was completely silent. My footsteps echoed through the empty rooms as I moved forward, my heart pounding in my chest. I came to what looked like the living room, a large space with a fireplace at one end and some broken furniture scattered around. I stood there for a moment listening to the silence when I noticed something on the floor near the fireplace. It was a photograph half buried in the dust. I picked it up, brushed off the dirt, and my heart skipped a beat when I saw what it was. It was a photo of Luna. She was standing in front of the very same house I was in, smiling at the camera with the same enigmatic smile from her profile pictures. But there was something strange about the photo, something I could not quite place. The colors were faded, the edges worn, and the paper felt old, as if it had been there for years. A chill ran down my spine as I realized that the picture could not have been taken recently. The house looked exactly the same as it did now, abandoned, ruined, lifeless. But Luna looked younger, different. It was her, but it was not her. The same hair, the same eyes, the same smile. And yet something did not fit. I stared at the photo, my mind racing. None of it made any sense. I tried to rationalize it, but deep down, I knew something was very, very wrong. I decided right then that I had to leave. Everything felt wrong, like some twisted prank that had gone too far. I turned toward the door, but then I heard something. A barely audible sound like a whisper coming from deeper inside the house. I froze, my heart thundering in my ears. It was so faint, so soft, that I almost thought I had imagined it. Then I heard it again, clearer this time. My name spoken from the shadows. Every instinct was screaming at me to run, to get out of there and never look back. But there was something about that whisper that rooted me in place. A morbid curiosity pushing me to find out what it was. I turned slowly. The darkness of the house seemed to close in around me as I tried to locate where the sound was coming from. Again, my name softly whispered, almost pleading from somewhere down the hallway. I did not want to follow it. I did not want to go any farther into that house, but my feet moved on their own. I walked down the narrow, dim hallway. The floor creaked beneath my weight, and the walls seemed to tighten around me. The whisper continued, growing with each step. When I turned a corner, I saw her. Luna was standing at the end of the hallway, her back to me, her long dark hair falling over her shoulders. She was wearing the same dress I had seen in her photos, the same one she had described in one of our messages. "Luna," I called, my voice trembling. She did not react. She remained motionless, as if she had not heard me. I took another step, and when I did, the temperature seemed to drop. The air turned cold and heavy. "Luna, is that you?" I insisted. No response. There was something about the way she stood there, so still, so unnaturally motionless, that made my blood run cold. I took another step, and then finally she moved. She turned slowly with jerky, unnatural movements, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. And when I saw her face, my blood froze. It was Luna, but it was not Luna. Her eyes were hollow, her skin pale and gaunt, as though she had not seen sunlight in years. Her lips curled into a grotesque smile, and when she opened her mouth, a rough, resonant voice whispered my name again. I stumbled backward, my heart racing, fear tightening around me like a vice. This could not be real. I had to be dreaming, imagining things. But the terror was real. The cold, the darkness, the whispers. All of it was real. "Luna, what is happening?" I asked, barely audible. She took a step forward, slow, deliberate, her eyes fixed on mine. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, her voice little more than a breath. I could not answer. My mind was racing, a mess of confusion and panic. I wanted to run, to get out of that house, but my feet would not obey me. "What are you doing here?" she repeated, louder now, more insistent. At last I found my voice weak and shaky. I thought we were going to meet. You asked me to come." Her smile widened, but there was no warmth or joy in it. It was cold, cruel, charged with something dark that turned my stomach. "I did not ask you to come," she whispered, her voice echoing through the hallway as if it were coming from everywhere. "You should not have come." I took another step back until my spine hit the wall, breathing in ragged gasps. "What are you?" I managed to say. Her eyes seemed to darken. The shadows around her deepened as she took another step. "I am what you wanted," she murmured, her voice soft and disturbing. "I am what you were looking for." I could not take it anymore. The fear, the cold, the darkness. It was too much. I turned and bolted down the hallway. My footsteps thundered against the walls as I ran toward the door. I could hear her behind me, the whisper, the icy air brushing against me as I fled. But when I reached the exit, the door would not open. No matter how hard I pulled, no matter how desperately I tried to force it would not budge. It was as if the house itself was holding me there. I turned around, my heart hammering, and saw her standing there in the doorway at the end of the hall, her eyes locked on mine, that twisted smile still fixed in place. "You should not have come," she whispered, her voice spreading inside my head, growing and growing until it was the only thing I could hear. I screamed. The sound was ripped from my throat and echoed through the empty house, but there was no one there to hear it, no one who could help me. And then everything went black. When I woke up, I was sitting inside my car. The sun was just beginning to rise. For a moment, I did not know where I was or how I had gotten there. My head was pounding, my body ached, and I was trying to piece together what had happened. Then it all came rushing back at once. The house, the whispers, Luna, or whatever it was that had been pretending to be Luna. My heart started racing as I looked around, expecting to see her, expecting to hear the whisper again. But there was nothing, only the abandoned house and the silence of the early morning. I did not waste any time. With trembling hands and an overwhelming urgency to get away, I started the engine and sped down the gravel driveway without looking back, without daring to slow down until I was miles away. It was not until I reached the main road that I pulled over. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. I sat there for a long time, trying to calm my racing heart, trying to make sense of what had happened. I knew I could not go to the police. What would I tell them? That I had been lured by a profile of a ghost? That the girl I had been talking to was dead? They would think I was crazy. And maybe I was. But the fear was real. The cold, the darkness, the whispers. All of it had been real. That same day, I deleted the app, blocked Luna's profile, and erased every trace of her from my phone. But no matter how hard I tried, I could not erase the memory of her, of that house, of the terror I felt. Story 2. My experience with online dating had always been a roller coaster. I had been through some awkward outings and quite a few conversations that vanished without explanation, but nothing serious enough to make me give up on it completely. So when I matched with a girl, I did not think too much of it. Just another conversation, another possible date. Her profile felt familiar in a way I could not quite place at first. It was not until we started talking that I realized why. Hannah and I had gone to the same high school. I had not seen or heard from her in years, but she looked just as I remembered her. The same bright smile, the same blonde hair, the same carefree vibe. We were not close back then. We were more like acquaintances who shared a few classes and said hello from time to time in the hallways. Even so, there was something comforting about reconnecting with someone from my past, especially after so many dates with strangers. The conversation flowed naturally, as if we were old friends catching up. We talked about high school memories, what we had been doing since graduation, and the usual exchange about work and hobbies. She even joked that we should have gone to prom together, and I found myself laughing. The nostalgia softened my usual skepticism toward dating apps. After a few days of chatting, we agreed to meet for coffee. Honestly, I was looking forward to it. It was a chance to see someone familiar and reconnect in person. We set a time and place, and I spent the rest of the week in a good mood, imagining what it would be like to see her again. Things started to get strange the night before the date. The first red flag came in the form of a message late at night. I was in bed, mindlessly scrolling through my phone, when I saw that Hannah had texted me. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow. I just wanted to make sure. You live alone now, right?" I frowned. It was a strange question, especially since we had never talked about my living situation. But I let it slide, thinking maybe she was just curious. Maybe she wanted to avoid an awkward run-in with roommates or something like that. I replied with a simple, "Yeah, I live alone," and left it at that. Still, the moment I hit send, a strange uneasiness came over me. There was something about the way she had asked that did not sit right. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself I was overreacting, but the feeling stayed. The next day was worse. Hannah started sending more messages, with increasingly personal questions about my routine. What time I left for work, when I came back, whether I had security cameras, that kind of thing. It was as if she were trying to map out my schedule in detail, and that started to make me uneasy. I decided to confront it and began typing a message, asking her why she needed to know all that. Before I could send it, another message came in, from a different number. "Hi, this is Hannah. Someone has been using my photos to catfish people on apps. If you've been talking to me on a dating app, it wasn't me. Be careful." My stomach dropped. I reread the message, my mind racing. If the real Hannah was warning me about a fake profile, then who the hell had I been talking to? And why were they asking me such invasive questions? A cold sense of dread settled in my stomach. Whoever had been chatting with me was not just playing some prank. They wanted to get close, to find out as much as possible about me and my life. I immediately blocked the fake Hannah and deleted the conversation history, my heart pounding as I tried to process it. I felt stupid for not noticing sooner, for letting my guard down just because I thought I was reconnecting with someone from my past. But the fear gnawing at me was not just about being deceived. It was the realization that this person knew where I lived, knew that I was alone, and had been asking questions that suggested they might be planning something worse than pretending to be someone else. I decided to stay home that night. I canceled the coffee I had rescheduled with the real Hannah. I told her what had happened, and she was understanding. She apologized for the situation, even though it was not her fault. She insisted that I be careful, that I lock up properly and stay alert for anything unusual. And that is exactly what I did. But as the night went on, my anxiety grew. I tried to distract myself. I watched some TV, played video games, anything to keep from thinking about the disturbing messages and the sense of threat that had latched onto me. But there was no shaking the feeling that something was wrong. The house felt different. Too quiet, too still. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow seemed to be hiding something sinister. I caught myself going to the windows over and over again, looking out onto the dark street, half expecting to see someone out there watching. By the time I decided to go to bed, it was already past midnight. I did one last round through the house, checking that all the doors and windows were locked, and then I lay down. Sleep would not come. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing through every worst-case scenario. At some point in the early hours of the morning, I heard it, a soft scraping sound coming from somewhere outside my bedroom door. I sat up, my heart hammering, straining to listen. There it was again, a faint, almost imperceptible noise, as if someone were trying to open a door very slowly, very quietly. Panic shot through me when I realized someone was inside. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and dialed 911. But just as I was about to hit call, the sound stopped. The silence that followed was so complete, so absolute, that it felt almost worse than the noise itself. I held my breath, waiting for whatever came next. Then there was another sound, a light, almost delicate knock on my bedroom door. I froze, every muscle tense, staring at the door, my mind racing. The knock came again, a little louder this time. I did not know what to do. Part of me wanted to shout, to ask who was there. Another part was too terrified to make a sound, afraid that any noise would trigger whatever was waiting on the other side. Instead, I slipped out of bed as quietly as I could, my feet barely sinking into the carpet. I moved toward the corner where I kept a baseball bat for self-defense, a habit I had picked up while living in a rough neighborhood during college. The knock came again, louder now, followed by the sound of the doorknob turning. I tightened my grip on the bat. My heart was pounding as the door creaked open. For a moment, nothing happened. The door remained half open, a slit of darkness beyond it. No one came in. I could feel my pulse in my throat. Every instinct was begging me to run, to hide, to do something. But I could not move. I was rooted to the floor, staring at the opening. Then a figure stepped inside. I could barely make out its shape in the dimness. Tall, a shadow in a hood pulled down over its face. It stood still for a moment, as if assessing the room, before taking a slow, deliberate step forward. I could hardly breathe. Fear was crushing my chest. I wanted to swing the bat, to defend myself, but my arms would not respond. All I could do was watch as the figure came closer, inch by inch, with measured movements. It reached the foot of the bed and stopped. It tilted its head slightly, as if looking directly at where I was standing. A wave of nausea ran through me. I realized it could see me, that it knew exactly where I was. And then it spoke. "You should not have blocked me." The voice was low, rough, with a quiet, icy intensity that ran down my spine. It took another step, and I knew I had to act. At last, my survival instinct kicked in, and with a burst of adrenaline, I swung the bat with all my strength, aiming for its head. But it was faster than I had imagined. It ducked. The bat cut through the air above it, and in one quick movement, it grabbed my wrist and ripped the bat out of my hands with shocking force. I stumbled backward, and fear turned into pure panic as I realized I was defenseless. The intruder raised the bat in a threatening way, and for a second I thought that was it, that I was going to die right there, in my own bedroom. But just as they were about to bring it down, the sound of sirens cut through the night. They were getting closer and closer. The intruder hesitated. I saw the grip tighten on the bat as the sirens approached. And then, without saying another word, they turned and bolted out the door, swallowed by the darkness of the hallway. I did not stay to see where they went. With my phone still connected to the 911 operator, I ran out of the house as fast as I could and did not stop until I was standing in the middle of the street. The police arrived within minutes, their lights flashing. I was shaking, my mind spinning, trying to explain what had happened, though the words came out broken and disordered. They searched the house, but the intruder had already slipped away. They found evidence of a break-in. The front door had been forced open, the locks damaged. Nothing was missing. Nothing was out of place, except for the fear that had taken root inside me. The days that followed were a blur of police reports, sleepless nights, and a constant sense of threat that I could not shake. The police never caught the intruder, and I never found out who they were or why they had chosen me. But the damage was already done. My sense of safety had collapsed, replaced by a constant fear that they would come back, that they were still out there waiting for another chance. I could not keep living in that house. The memories of that night, the terror, were too strong, too overwhelming. I packed my things and moved away, leaving behind the place I had once called home, hoping that distance would help me forget. But the truth is, it never really went away. Even now in my new apartment, I catch myself checking the locks twice, peeking through the windows at every noise, my heart speeding up at every unexpected sound. I stopped using dating apps, closed all my accounts, and tried to move on. And even so, I cannot help wondering if that person is still out there, still looking for me, waiting for the perfect moment to appear again. Story 3. I was not looking for anything serious when I matched with a girl I will call Sophia to protect her anonymity. It was one of those late-night swiping sessions, with one eye on the TV and the other on profiles. But there was something about her that caught my attention. Maybe her smile, or the way her eyes seemed to light up in every photo. Her bio was simple, almost cryptic. Just a girl who loves good coffee and bad movies. We started chatting, and I was intrigued right away. She was funny with a touch of sarcasm, and we shared a lot of interests. We talked about everything. Favorite books, our most embarrassing moments, even what we would do in a zombie apocalypse. There was an easy chemistry between us, the kind I had not felt in a long time. After a week of late-night messages and early morning texts, we decided to meet. Nothing complicated. Coffee at a cafe downtown. I liked that it was something relaxed, no pressure, just two people getting to know each other in person. Then she asked me a question that caught me off guard. Do you believe in fate? I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. It is not the kind of question you expect in a casual conversation, especially right before meeting someone for the first time. I'm not really sure, I replied, trying to keep the tone light. Why do you ask? There was a long pause before she answered. Just curious. I think there are people who are meant to meet, no matter what happens. It was a strange thing to say, but I did not think too much about it. I assumed she was just being philosophical, maybe a little romantic. I let it go and went to bed, excited for the date the next day. Looking back now, I wish I had paid more attention to that message. On the day of the date, I arrived at the cafe a little early. It was a small, cozy place tucked away on a quiet street. Exactly the kind of place you would imagine Sophia suggesting. I took a table by the window and ordered coffee, trying to calm the nervous energy buzzing in my chest. I kept checking my phone, half expecting a last-minute cancellation text, but nothing came. She was supposed to show up any minute, and I could not help glancing at the door every time someone walked in. After about 10 minutes, the door flew open, and there she was. Sophia looked just like her photos, maybe even better in person. She had an effortless style, a simple dress with a denim jacket, her hair falling in loose waves over her shoulders. When she saw me, she smiled, and a rush of relief went through me. Sorry I'm late, she said as she sat down. Parking was a nightmare. No problem, I replied with a smile. I just got here too. The conversation flowed just as easily as it had online. There were no awkward silences or forced pauses, just two people enjoying each other's company. We talked about everything, work, our favorite movies, and before we knew it, an hour had passed. At one point, she leaned toward me and lowered her voice in a conspiratorial tone. So what do you think? Was it fate that brought us together? I laughed, remembering the conversation from the night before. Maybe, I said, playing along. Or maybe it was just the algorithm. She smiled, but there was something in her eyes, a fleeting glint that made me feel as though she knew more than she was letting on. It lasted only a moment, but it unsettled me. At the end of the date, we made plans to see each other again. She suggested dinner at a restaurant she knew, and I happily agreed. She gave me the address, and we said goodbye, both smiling. Still, as I walked back to my car, I could not shake a strange feeling. It was a persistent tingling at the back of my neck, like a pebble in my shoe. Irritating, impossible to ignore. I brushed it off, thinking I was overanalyzing things. I had really liked Sophia and wanted to see her again, but that discomfort stayed with me no matter how hard I tried to clear my head. On the day of the second date, I was in a good mood. Work had gone smoothly, and I was looking forward to seeing Sophia again. I left the office a little early so I could get to the restaurant on time. The address was in an area that was unfamiliar to me, but I did not think much of it. I figured it would be a hidden gem, one of those places only locals know about. As I drove, the surroundings became less and less familiar. With every mile, the neighborhood looked more run down, until I found myself in an area that seemed completely abandoned. I checked the GPS, thinking I must have taken a wrong turn somewhere. But no, the address Sophia had given me was only a few streets away. The uneasiness came back, stronger this time, gnawing at my stomach. I thought about turning around and texting her to suggest another place, but I did not want to seem paranoid. After all, she was the one who had suggested it. Maybe it was one of those rundown places with amazing food that you would never find unless someone recommended it. When I finally arrived, my heart sank. The restaurant did not exist. There was only an empty lot. I parked and got out of the car, staring at the barren piece of land in front of me. Weeds had taken over what must once have been a building, and the ground was scattered with broken glass. There was no sign of a restaurant or of anything at all. I checked my phone, hoping I had made a mistake, but the address was correct. I called Sophia. The call went straight to voicemail. I texted her asking where she was, but got no reply. I stood there for a few minutes waiting for her to call or show up, but the street remained deserted, silent, with only the distant hum of traffic. The uneasiness had already turned into full-blown anxiety. After about 20 minutes, I decided to leave. Something was very wrong, and I was not going to stay around to find out what. I got back in my car and drove away, my mind racing through every possibility. Maybe she had gotten the address wrong, or maybe it was some kind of cruel joke. But none of the explanations made sense. Once I was back in more familiar areas, I still could not shake the feeling that I had been lured into a trap. I kept checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone following me, but the road stayed empty. When I got home, I tried calling her again, voicemail just like before. I sent more messages asking if everything was okay, and hours went by with no answer. That night I barely slept. I kept my phone within reach, waiting for her to call or reply, but nothing. The next morning I tried again, and the line had been disconnected. Her number had been shut off. A wave of cold went through me as I realized Sophia had disappeared completely. No phone, no social media, no trace, as if she had never existed. I spent the next few days trying to track her down. I searched for her on every platform, called every number I could find. Nothing. It was as if she had been erased from the map. That was when I started digging deeper. I could not let it go. The situation was eating away at me, and I needed to know what had happened to Sophia. I went out and started asking around in person, talking to people in the neighborhood where the restaurant was supposed to be, hoping someone had seen or heard something. Most people just shrugged. There had never been a restaurant there. Then I came across an older man who had lived in the area for decades. When I mentioned the address, his expression changed. He narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "That place," he said, shaking his head. "That lot has been empty for years. There used to be a building there, but it burned down about 15 years ago. Since then, nobody has built anything there." A chill ran through me. "Do you know what happened?" I asked. The man hesitated, then sighed. "It was a fire. Nobody knows how it started, but a lot of people died. Families, children. A tragedy. The place was abandoned. Some people say it is. Cursed." I thanked him and left, my mind spinning. A fire. A cursed lot. It sounded like something out of a horror movie, but I could not shake the feeling that there was more to it. I went home and started researching. Newspaper archives, old articles, records. It did not take long to find it. There really had been a fire, and it had claimed several lives. Among the victims was a young woman named Sophia. The same name, the same description as the girl I had met. The article included a photo, and my blood ran cold when I saw it. It was her, the same girl from the cafe, the same one I had been talking to for weeks. But that was impossible. She had died years earlier, long before dating apps even existed. I sat staring at the screen, my mind in shock. Had I been talking to a ghost? Was that why she had asked me about fate? About whether I believed that two people were meant to meet? The more I thought about it, the more the pieces started fitting together in a twisted way. The strange questions, the empty lot, her disappearance without a trace. Realizing that I had been communicating with someone who was no longer alive did not bring me peace. If anything, it deepened the fear that had been growing inside me. That night I did not sleep at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. That smile, those eyes that seemed to look right through me. I heard her voice, asking me about fate, about whether we had been meant to meet. The next morning I deleted the dating app, blocked her number, and tried to move on. But no matter how hard I tried, I could not shake the feeling that she was still there, somewhere, waiting for me. A few weeks passed, and little by little I started to regain some sense of normalcy. I kept telling myself it had all been some absurd coincidence, that maybe my mind had played a trick on me. But deep down I knew that was not true. One night I went out with friends, determined to have a few drinks and forget all about it. For a while it worked. I felt a little more like myself, the fear fading into the background. Then as I was leaving the bar, I saw her, Sophia, standing across the street just outside the reach of the streetlights, staring straight at me. I thought I was hallucinating, that the beers were playing tricks on me. But then she smiled, the same smile that had captivated me the first time. I stood frozen, my heart pounding, a wave of cold running through me. I wanted to run, to put as much distance between us as possible, but my feet would not obey me. She started walking toward me slowly, deliberately, without taking her eyes off me. I felt the blood drain from my face, my whole body tightening with terror. And just as she reached the edge of the light, she stopped. We stayed there for what felt like a long moment, staring at each other, while the world around us faded away. There was no sound, no movement, just the two of us, suspended in that frozen second. She smiled again, but this time it was different, darker, more sinister. And then, as suddenly as she had appeared, she turned around and disappeared into the night. I stood there shaking, my mind shattered. I wanted to run after her, demand answers, but I knew I would never catch her. I knew she was already gone. I have not seen Sophia again since that night, but I know she is still out there. I can feel it, a presence lurking behind every step. I stopped using dating apps, stopped trying to meet anyone new. I cannot take the risk, not after what happened. Story 4. Online dating had never really been my thing, but after my last relationship ended, I thought, why not give it a try? My friends kept saying it was the best way to meet new people, especially in this digital age. After some persuasion, I downloaded Tinder and set up a profile. At first it was casual, swiping left and right, chatting with a few people here and there, nothing serious. That changed when I matched with Isabella. Isabella seemed nice. Her profile was full of beach photos, pictures of her out with friends, and even a few candid shots of her laughing. She looked normal, with no warning signs, nothing that set off alarms for me. Her bio was short, something about loving dogs and being a foodie, pretty standard. We started talking and she came across as fun, a little quirky, but in a good way. After a few days of messages back and forth, she suggested we meet up. I hesitated a little. Meeting someone from the internet in real life is intimidating, but she was persistent, and eventually I agreed. We planned a casual coffee date at a cafe downtown, public place, middle of the day. Nothing to worry about. When I arrived, I was nervous but more excited than anything else. I scanned the cafe looking for Isabella and spotted her almost right away. She looked exactly like her photos, which was a relief. She was sitting at a small table by the window, her dark hair falling over her shoulders as she sipped her coffee. I took a deep breath, walked over, and introduced myself. She looked up, smiled, and for a moment everything felt normal. The feeling did not last. As soon as I sat down, I noticed something off about Isabella. At first it was small things, the way she kept looking around the cafe, as if she were expecting someone else to arrive. Her eyes darted to the door every time it opened, and she seemed distracted, almost nervous. I tried making conversation, her day, her job, her interests. She answered sure, but with short, almost rehearsed responses, as if she were not really listening. Instead, she kept steering the conversation back to me, asking very specific questions about my life, where I lived, whether I lived alone, what time I usually got home from work. I started to feel uncomfortable, but I let it slide, thinking maybe I was just being paranoid. First dates can be awkward. Then she started asking about my apartment. "Do you like where you live?" she said suddenly, with a burst of interest, leaning forward as if my answer were crucial. "Yeah, it's fine," I replied, trying to sound casual. "Nothing special, just a small place downtown." She nodded and her eyes lit up. "Do you have roommates?" I hesitated for a second. I did not understand why she was so interested in my living situation, but I answered anyway. "No, I live alone." I regretted it instantly. Her smile widened. "That must be great," she said, her tone almost envious. I forced a smile to hide my discomfort. "It's quiet," I said shortly, then changed the subject as quickly as I could. It did not matter what I talked about. She always brought it back to my apartment, my schedule, whether I had pets. By the time the date ended, I was more than ready to leave. I walked her to her car, made up an excuse about having to head back early, and said goodbye. She seemed disappointed, but she did not push it. She just smiled and waved as she drove away. Watching her car disappear down the street, I felt relieved. The date had been weird, sure, but at least it was over. I told myself it had been a one-time thing and that I would not have to see her again if I did not want to. Even so, deep down, I could not shake the feeling that something was not right. The next few days were quiet. Work, gym, home. I did not hear from Isabella, and I did not text her either. It was for the best. The date had been uncomfortable, and I had no interest in repeating it. Then things started happening. At first, they were small details, easy to dismiss. I would come home from work and find the front door unlocked, even though I could have sworn I had locked it. Or I would notice objects slightly out of place. A book moved to the other side of the table, a mug in the sink that I did not remember using. At first, I blamed it on my own forgetfulness, fatigue, stress. But as the days passed, the strange incidents became impossible to ignore. One night I came home and found the bedroom window wide open. I always kept it shut and latched, especially because I lived on the ground floor. But there it was, the curtains fluttering in the breeze, the lock undone. A chill ran through me. Someone had been inside my apartment. There was no other explanation. I checked everything, looking for signs of a break-in, but nothing was broken. No lock had been forced. It was as if whoever had entered had a key. That night I barely slept. Every whisper of the wind made my heart race. I left the lights on and kept my phone in my hand, ready to call the police at the slightest noise. Nothing happened. The next day, I called my landlord and asked if anyone else had access. He assured me that I was the only one with a key and that the locks had not been changed in years. I asked him to replace them. He said it would take a few days before he could send someone. I felt a pit in my stomach, but I had no other choice. I kept telling myself I was overreacting, that there had to be some logical explanation. And yet I could not get rid of the feeling that I was being watched, as if someone were waiting for the right moment to make a move. A few days later, I found the phone. It was Friday night. I had just gotten home from work, exhausted, ready to order food and watch Netflix. As I settled in, I heard a strange buzzing sound coming from the hallway. I thought it was my own phone, but it was not. The buzzing continued, low and persistent, coming from somewhere nearby. I followed the sound, my heart pounding in my chest, until I reached the small door to the boiler room. It was slightly open. The buzzing was louder there, more insistent. I hesitated, a sense of dread hanging over me, but I could not ignore it. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, cold, musty air wrapped around me. The buzzing echoed off the concrete walls. I shined my phone's flashlight around, searching for the source. Then I saw it, a black smartphone wedged between two pipes in the corner. The screen was lit up. That was the source of the buzzing, with a notification flashing. I picked it up with trembling hands. The phone was locked, but the notification was still visible. A message from an unknown number. "Why aren't you answering me?" My blood ran cold. That was not my phone. I had no idea whose it was or how it had ended up in my boiler room, but the implications were horrifying. Someone had been inside my home and had left their phone behind. My mind started racing, connecting the dots. The unlocked door, the open window, the moved objects. It all fit together. And then it hit me. Isabella. Her questions during the date, her obsession with whether I lived alone with my apartment. It had all been an act, getting close, learning about me, setting up her plan. I dropped the phone, my fingers shaking, and stumbled out of the boiler room. I had to get out of there, call the police, do something. But just as I reached for my own phone, I heard a sound. A soft creak like a door opening slowly. I froze, holding my breath. It was coming from the hallway just outside my bedroom door. I turned slowly, my heartbeat roaring in my ears. The door was half open, just like the boiler room door, and in the dim light a shadow was outlined there. A tall, slender figure standing just inside the frame. It was her. For a moment, neither of us moved. The only sound was the buzzing of the phone still lying on the boiler room floor. Isabella stood in the doorway. I could see her eyes, wide and unblinking, locked onto mine with an intensity that froze my blood. She took a step forward, and by reflex, I stepped back. I wanted to run, but I was paralyzed with fear. "Why did you disappear?" she whispered. Her voice was soft, disturbingly calm. I did not answer. I could not. My throat had closed up, and I was breathing in short gasps. "Why did you disappear?" she repeated, louder this time, as she took another step forward. I forced myself to move, stumbling backward toward the living room. I had to get help, but she was blocking the exit. The front door was behind her, and I was trapped. She stretched out a trembling hand, her eyes still fixed on mine. "I thought you loved me," she said, her voice breaking as her eyes filled with tears. My mind was racing, trying to understand what was happening. She was not the same girl from the first date. She was someone dangerous, unstable. I had to do something. I could not let her get any closer. My eyes swept across the room, searching for anything I could use. I did not get the chance. She lunged at me, her hands reaching for my throat. I reacted on instinct. I grabbed the lamp from the side table and hurled it at her. It landed with a hard, solid hit. She staggered, her eyes wide with pain and shock. I did not wait to see if she recovered. I threw myself at the door, yanked it open, and ran into the hallway. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial 911, but I managed. The police arrived within minutes. By then, Isabella had vanished. They found clear evidence that she had been there. Her phone in the boiler room, fingerprints all over my apartment, and even a small bag she had left behind filled with personal items. They tracked her down a few hours later, hiding in an alley a few blocks from my building. She was arrested and charged with stalking, trespassing, and assault. It turned out her real name was Silvana, not Isabella, and that she had a history of stalking and mental health issues. I felt overwhelming relief knowing she was in custody, but it was mixed with a persistent fear that I had not seen the last of her. The police assured me she would face justice, that I was safe, but it did not feel that way. The very next day, I moved out of that apartment. I broke the lease and relocated to another part of the city. I changed my phone number, deleted my dating apps, and did everything I could to leave the experience behind. The fear, however, never disappeared completely. Every creak in the new apartment, every object out of place, brought back that cold feeling in my stomach, reminding me that I had been watched, that I had been exposed. If these stories gave you chills, do not forget to smash the like button and share the scare with your friends. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that will chill you to the bone, and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss any new videos. Have you also had a creepy experience with dating apps? Tell us in the comments. We want to hear your story. Remember, in the world of online dating, not everything is what it seems. Stay safe out there. See you in the next nightmare.